Hi there, in Ch2 we are going to explore ethics, economics, and policy. What or who or what do we value? And in this chapter, we are going to be able to define ethics. We are going to understand the supply and the demand, and describe the relationship between efficiency and the consumption. And I have some fun exercise for you to do. And you will understand how market failures can cause environmental harm, and describe the policies and the name important environmental policies in the United States, and apply all these to our daily lives. So for our first goal, we try to understand what is ethics. So decision makers must consider ethics, economics, and the policy, all those three parts, when they make big decisions. And when the pollution goes global, those decisions are even more complicated. And our textbook uses one example, which was horrible. It's an oil spill incident in 2010. And this company, British Petroleum, was found guilty of causing the spill due to gross negligence, and it caused enormous loss of lives, money, and the government had to place new regulations on offshore drilling. And I want to point out the consequences of their mistakes. So as humans, we all make mistakes. How come such a big mistake was happening? I think they all start with very small mistakes, and people just keep ignoring it. So in this slide, you will see the two supervisors indicted on 23 counts. And one of those is ignoring warning signs. So when we do something wrong, there's alarming sounding, and you keep ignoring it, it will lead to the big mistakes. The other thing I want to point out is the several environmental laws they broke. And for Clean Water Act, the fines could be between 5 billion to 20 billion. So I want you to read the article attached to D2L. This is another story about humans making mistakes and ethics. It's called Flint Water Crisis Case Study. So read the article and think about these two questions. So when we make laws and agreements, what standards we adopt? There's an example in the textbook. The BPA products are banned because FDA released a report. It has hazardous chemicals in some of the plastic products, like baby bottles. So the parent have duty to care for their children, so they're concerned about their well-being. And the children have the right to an adequate standard of care. So in this scenario, the children have a right to the baby bottles free of those hazardous chemicals. And the parents have a duty to choose the products BPA free. And this approach is called deontological ethics, an approach to ethics that establish duties that are to be upheld and the rights that are to be protected. So when we make laws and agreements, we examine duties and the rights. And there's a cornerstone of the environmental policy in this country, that is 1970, when President Nixon signed the National Environmental Policy Act. And during this process of decision making, people consider the intrinsic values of all parties. So intrinsic value is something is worth in and of itself. And internationally, on the international scales, countries start to recognize the rights of the environment, of the animals, of the ecosystems, and our duties to protect them. So this is the figure to show you how many countries participate in the international laws to protect endangered animals, to protect the oceans, biodiversity, etc. And as time goes by, we can see more and more countries join the agreement. So when we make a big decision, such as building a hydroelectric dam, and this may provide power to regions, but also require flooding homes. So when we face such a big decision, what factors are we taking into? It's called an approach of utilitarianism. So long story short, it's to consider how much good we can get out of the action and how much little harm as possible we can achieve by making the choice. So overall, is we try to balance the weight of good against the weight of bad. And the one that produces the most benefit is what should be pursued. And during this process, it is very interesting. This is like philosophy we're going to discuss. So what do we care about? There are three basic approaches. One is human-centered. It's called anthropocentrism. So the ecosystem do not have values if they are not useful for us. So this is the way the human-centered philosophers would take. And biocentrism is focusing on the biological lives. And ecocentrism, which is more interesting, ecocentrism is to value the intrinsic value of the whole ecosystem, not only living things, but also non-living things. And we have a graph in the textbook. We can, it's a mountain with a forest. And if you are adopting the first approach, anthropocentrism, you are going to center on your own desires, your own judgment, what is valuable to you. And for biocentrism, obviously the trees, the animals, those are great value to you, and you are going to make decisions based on their values. And ecocentrism, if you are ecocentrist, you are going to value the whole thing, okay? Not only the biological lives, but also the mountains, the soil, the water, the whole ecosystem. That's what you are going to consider about. And the leader in this philosophy, I would say, is Aldo Leopold. And he draws the boundaries around protection of both living and non-living components of ecosystem. And he valued the whole thing. So that is the first part of my lecture.